My beloved child, stop for a moment, because if you were about to scroll away, there is something you need to hear first. The person your heart has never truly been able to forget may be standing at the edge of a decision they never thought they would have to make. And the most surprising part is this: their silence may not mean they stopped caring. It may mean they have been fighting a private battle between what their heart wants and what they believe they are supposed to do. Stay with me for a moment, because this message is not about simply telling you that someone misses you. It goes much deeper than that. There is a moment approaching where your soulmate may finally realize that walking away from you is not as easy as they imagined. They may have tried to convince themselves that distance would make their feelings disappear. They may have told themselves that time would erase the memories, that silence would create peace, and that moving forward without you would somehow become easier. But something happened that they did not expect. The more they tried to close the door emotionally, the more clearly they began to understand what was standing behind it. And now, there is a strange heaviness surrounding their heart. They are beginning to understand that saying goodbye to you would not simply mean leaving a person behind. It would mean leaving behind a version of themselves that only existed when they felt truly understood. This is why you may have sensed something changing even though nothing obvious happened. You may have suddenly remembered them without knowing why. You may have felt an unexplained emotional pull, heard a song that reminded you of them, or noticed a familiar thought returning again and again. Do not rush past that feeling. As this unfolds, clarity will come. Because the revelation is not that your soulmate has forgotten you. The revelation is that they have been trying to forget something they never completely stopped feeling. And there is one particular realization that may have shaken them more than anything else. They may have finally understood that what they were searching for in other places was something they had already experienced with you. They may have looked at other connections, other conversations, other possibilities, and still found themselves comparing everything to the feeling they had with you. They did not want to admit it. Their pride resisted it. Their mind questioned it. But their heart kept returning to the same place. You. That is why this goodbye feels different. It is not necessarily the end of the story. It may be the moment before the truth finally comes to the surface. But here is where this message becomes even more unexpected. Your soulmate may not be preparing to say goodbye because they no longer want you. They may be preparing to say goodbye because they believe you have already moved on. Think about that for a moment. They could be looking at your silence and interpreting it as acceptance. They could be assuming that because you stopped chasing, you stopped caring. They could be telling themselves, maybe they are happier without me. And that thought may be hurting them more than they ever expected. There is a difference between losing interest and losing hope. Your soulmate may still care deeply, but they may have convinced themselves that they no longer have a place in your life. That belief can make someone behave in ways that look cold from the outside. They become distant. They stop explaining themselves. They delay messages. They watch from afar instead of stepping forward. They wait for a sign because they are afraid of making the wrong move. And while you may have been wondering why they have not done something obvious, they may have been wondering exactly the same thing about you. This is the emotional misunderstanding that has kept this connection suspended. Both sides may have been waiting for the other person to reveal something first. And now, the pressure is reaching a point where somebody has to make a decision. This may resonate as we continue, especially if you have felt that this person is somehow close to you emotionally even when they are physically distant. There may be a conversation they have replayed in their mind countless times. There may be words they wanted to say but never found the courage to express. And there may be one sentence they have secretly wished you would say to them. Not a dramatic declaration. Not something complicated. Just reassurance that the connection mattered to you too. They may be carrying regret over a moment when they should have spoken but stayed quiet. They may remember a specific time when you needed them and they were not emotionally present enough. They may remember your patience, your kindness, or the way you understood something about them that even they struggled to understand about themselves. That memory may be becoming stronger now. And this is where the once-in-a-lifetime revelation begins to form. Sometimes a person does not realize the value of a connection while they have access to it. They realize it when they finally believe they might lose it. Your soulmate may be approaching that realization right now. The goodbye they have been considering may not be a goodbye to you alone. It may be a goodbye to their old way of handling this connection. A goodbye to hesitation. A goodbye to pretending. A goodbye to allowing pride to speak louder than their heart. Something huge is waiting for you, but it may not arrive in the dramatic way you expect. It could begin with something incredibly simple, a message, a question, an unexpected conversation, or a small attempt to reopen a door they once closed. And when it happens, do not focus only on the words. Pay attention to what those words are trying to reveal. There is another layer you need to hear before you decide what this message means for you. Your soulmate may be facing an internal deadline. Not a literal countdown, but a moment when they can no longer remain undecided. They may have reached the point where staying silent feels heavier than speaking. And that is why their energy may feel different. They may be asking themselves questions they avoided for a long time. What if I had chosen differently? What if I had been honest sooner? What if this person really was meant to change my life? These questions can become impossible to ignore once the distractions disappear. And when the noise becomes quiet, memories become loud. They may remember the beginning of your connection. They may remember the first moment they felt something unusual around you. They may remember something you said casually that stayed with them for years. You may not even realize how deeply certain moments affected them. Perhaps you thought they forgot. Perhaps you thought they never cared. But people do not always reveal what they carry inside. Sometimes the person who appears the most unaffected is the person spending the most time trying to understand their own emotions. This is why I want you to listen carefully. Do not interpret silence as proof that the connection meant nothing. Silence can mean many things. It can mean confusion. It can mean fear of rejection. It can mean emotional exhaustion. It can mean someone is trying to make a decision that affects the future. And there is a possibility that your soulmate has been standing between two paths, one path where they continue pretending they are fine without you, and another where they finally acknowledge what their heart has been saying. The second path requires courage. It requires vulnerability. It requires them to admit that some choices from the past were not as simple as they appeared. It may require an apology. It may require an explanation. It may even require them to admit that they were wrong about something they once believed completely. That is a difficult thing for anyone to do. But there comes a point when protecting pride becomes more painful than telling the truth. That point may be approaching. And if you have been waiting for a sign that something is changing, this may be the emotional shift you have been sensing. Not because you should stop living your life and wait for someone else, but because you deserve to understand what may have been happening beneath the surface. Your soulmate may be realizing that you cannot be replaced simply by meeting someone new. They may be realizing that chemistry is not the same as understanding, attention is not the same as connection, and proximity is not the same as belonging. That realization can completely change someone's perspective. They may have thought saying goodbye would bring relief. Instead, they may be discovering that the thought of permanently losing you brings a feeling they cannot easily explain. And that is when a person begins to reconsider everything. So if a message comes, if a conversation begins, if they suddenly become more open, do not immediately rush to the conclusion that everything has changed overnight. Let their actions speak. Let consistency reveal what words cannot. Let the truth unfold naturally. Because the strongest reunion is not built on desperation. It is built on clarity. And now, my beloved child, we arrive at the part you were not expecting. The message may be saying, your soulmate is about to say goodbye forever, but the deeper message is about what happens immediately before that decision becomes permanent. There is often one final emotional moment when a person realizes what they are actually about to lose. That moment can change everything. Your soulmate may be closer to that realization than you think. They may be looking back at the connection and recognizing details they once overlooked. They may be realizing that your presence was not ordinary. They may be remembering how naturally you could understand their moods, how certain conversations felt effortless, or how being around you gave them a feeling they could not reproduce elsewhere. And perhaps the most painful realization is that they may have contributed to the distance themselves. They may know they waited too long. They may know they left things unsaid. They may know they allowed circumstances, pride, confusion, or fear to create space between you. That knowledge can create a powerful emotional crossroads. They can either accept the distance and walk away completely, or they can finally take the risk of being honest. That is why this message matters. Not because you should fear losing someone, but because you should understand that some endings are actually invitations for truth. If they return, let them return with honesty. If they speak, listen for sincerity. If they apologize, watch whether their actions support the apology. And if they finally tell you what they have been carrying, do not interrupt the moment with old assumptions. Sometimes the person you thought had forgotten you has been carrying your memory quietly the entire time. Sometimes the person who appeared ready to move forward was actually afraid that you had already moved forward without them. And sometimes what looks like a final goodbye is simply the final moment before someone chooses to stop running from what they feel. Stay with me for a moment and remember this. you do not have to chase anyone to prove that you are worthy of being chosen. You do not have to beg someone to recognize your value. You do not have to abandon your peace just because another person is confused. Your role is to remain grounded while the truth reveals itself. If this message feels strangely connected to your situation, share it with someone who may need these words, because sometimes one message reaches a person at exactly the moment they need clarity. And remember, the biggest revelation may not be that your soulmate is coming back. It may be that you are finally going to understand why this connection affected you so deeply in the first place. Maybe it taught you patience. Maybe it taught you boundaries. Maybe it taught you what real emotional honesty should look like. Maybe it prepared you for a love that no longer requires guessing. Whatever happens next, do not allow uncertainty to steal your peace. Something huge is waiting for you, and when the truth finally arrives, you will understand why the silence, the distance, the unanswered questions, and the emotional confusion had to unfold the way they did. Your soulmate may be standing at the edge of a goodbye, but you are standing at the beginning of clarity. And sometimes, clarity is the moment when everything changes. My beloved child, something has shifted, and this time the silence carries a completely different meaning. You may have thought the hardest part was not knowing what your soulmate truly feels, but there is something even deeper happening beneath that uncertainty. They may have reached a moment where they are asking themselves one question again and again: if I walk away now, will I regret it for the rest of my life? Stay with me for a moment, because that question may be the reason their behavior has felt so different lately. They are not simply thinking about the past. They are thinking about the future they might lose if they continue pretending that this connection does not matter. There is a strange emotional battle happening inside them. One side tells them to protect themselves, stay quiet, and move forward. The other side keeps bringing your memory back into their heart. Every time they try to convince themselves that it is over, another memory appears. A conversation. A look. A moment when you made them feel understood without asking them to explain everything. And now they may be realizing something that they never wanted to admit: some people can leave your life, but their impact does not leave with them. This may be why you have felt an unexpected emotional shift. You may have been going through your day normally when suddenly their name appeared in your thoughts. You may have felt nostalgic without knowing what triggered it. You may have remembered something from the past that you had not thought about for a long time. As this unfolds, clarity will come. The connection may be reaching a point where pretending is becoming impossible. Your soulmate may have spent a long time believing that if they waited long enough, their feelings would become easier to control. But instead, time may have made one truth clearer. They still care. And perhaps the most surprising part is that they may now understand that saying goodbye without telling you the truth could become their greatest regret. Something huge is waiting for you, but before it arrives, there may be one final emotional wall that needs to come down. Now listen carefully, because this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Your soulmate may have already imagined what it would feel like to completely remove you from their life. They may have pictured no more conversations, no more memories, no more wondering what you are doing, no more waiting for a sign. At first, they may have believed that this would bring peace. But when they imagined that future honestly, something inside them resisted. They realized that they were not only giving up a relationship or a possibility. They were giving up the chance to ever discover what this connection could have become. That thought may be haunting them. What if they had spoken sooner? What if they had been more honest? What if one misunderstanding changed everything? What if the distance was created by fear instead of lack of love? These questions can become incredibly powerful when someone finally stops distracting themselves. And there is one memory they may keep returning to because it represents everything they never said. Maybe there was a moment when you were waiting for them to choose you, and they hesitated. Maybe you offered understanding when they expected judgment. Maybe you gave them space when they secretly wanted you to stay. Whatever that moment was, they may now be seeing it differently. They may finally understand your perspective. And that realization can create a deep emotional shift. This is why you should not be surprised if their next move seems small at first. People who have been silent for a long time rarely begin with a huge confession. They begin with something simple. A question. A reaction. A casual message. A reason to reconnect. Something that gives them an opportunity to see whether the door is still open. And if that happens, remember this: do not measure the importance of the moment by the size of the first step. Sometimes the smallest step is the beginning of the biggest change. If this message is resonating with you, share it with someone who may need to hear these words, and stay connected to this message because the next part of this revelation is where the hidden emotion becomes much clearer. Your soulmate may be closer to making a decision than they have ever been before. And whether they choose to speak or remain silent, something inside them is already changing. They are beginning to understand that you were never simply a chapter they could close whenever they wanted. You became part of a story they never fully finished. There is also something you need to understand about the word goodbye. Sometimes a goodbye is not about leaving another person. Sometimes it is about leaving behind an old version of yourself. Your soulmate may be preparing to say goodbye to the person they used to be when they were connected to you. The version that was afraid to communicate. The version that allowed pride to control emotional decisions. The version that believed staying silent was safer than being vulnerable. And if that is what is happening, then the next stage of this connection may feel completely different. They may begin to communicate differently. They may become more honest. They may stop pretending that everything is fine. They may finally acknowledge the things they previously avoided. This could be why the energy around this connection feels like something is about to break open. Not in a negative way, but in the sense that a long-standing emotional barrier is weakening. And here is the revelation that may surprise you the most: they may not be afraid of losing you because they suddenly discovered your value. They may be afraid because they finally understand that they have known your value for much longer than they admitted. The problem was never that they did not recognize what you meant. The problem was that recognizing it would force them to confront everything they had been avoiding. Their own choices. Their own hesitation. Their own regrets. Their own emotions. And that is much harder than simply missing someone. Missing you is easy. Admitting why they miss you is the difficult part. This may resonate as we continue because perhaps you have wondered why this person could seem so close one moment and so distant the next. It may have had less to do with you than you believed. Their internal conflict may have been stronger than anything they ever showed you. They may have wanted to come forward but feared rejection. They may have wanted to explain themselves but feared reopening old emotions. They may have wanted another chance but believed they had already waited too long. Now, however, the possibility of permanent separation may be forcing them to confront that fear. And that is when people sometimes make choices they once believed were impossible. They stop waiting for the perfect moment. They stop rehearsing conversations in their head. They simply decide that knowing the truth is better than spending another year wondering, what if? So before you leave this message, remember one final thing. Your soulmate may be standing at an emotional crossroads, but you do not have to stand there with them. Continue living. Continue growing. Continue protecting your peace. If they truly want to return, let their actions demonstrate it. If they have something to say, allow them the courage to say it. You do not need to chase an answer that is meant to come toward you. And if they do reach out, do not immediately focus on whether they are coming back forever. Listen to what they are actually trying to tell you. The most important sentence may not be, "I miss you." It may be something much deeper, "I finally understand what I lost." That realization can change the entire direction of a connection. Perhaps their goodbye was never truly about leaving you. Perhaps it was about saying goodbye to the fear that kept them from choosing honesty. Perhaps the final goodbye is to the silence itself. And perhaps, after everything that happened, they are finally ready to have the conversation that should have happened a long time ago. Stay with me for a moment and hold on to this thought. You cannot control another person's decision, but you can control whether you allow uncertainty to control your heart. If this message reached you at the right moment, share it, subscribe, and stay connected because the next revelation may explain why this person has been holding back for so long. Something huge is waiting for you, but it will reveal itself through clarity, not confusion. And when that moment arrives, you may finally understand why the connection had to pass through silence before the truth could finally speak. The goodbye may be approaching, but so may the conversation that changes everything.